Awesome. If any of you have been at Phil Singapore or other places, hopefully you've gotten a little bit of a taste of past roadmaps for 2022. This is going to be mostly looking forward to 2023 and some of the big things that are coming in Filecoin land. Yes, I am actually being actively bitten in this picture. We were requested to show all of the Lotus cats. This is my Aussie, which is different than Jennifer's Aussie, and he is a little demon. But we love him anyway. Yeah, so that's Aussie. He can be cute, but don't worry, he's actually evil, and that's his sister Izzy. Yeah, she's lovely, but he's a little demon. Cool. Filecoin Roadmap in 2022 kind of had three main components. Y'all are probably pretty familiar with these things. First and foremost, there was a big focus on capacity and data onboarding, making sure that useful capacity and useful data storage could land in the Filecoin network. And this could be, groups like Internet Archive or New York Public Data or Harvard or other groups could bring kind of archival data to the Filecoin network, and that we could improve the software and tooling such that this was able to grow. And so for context, a year ago, we had something like 20 to 30 petabytes of data stored in Filecoin. Now we have 280 going on 290. Like, I can't actually keep up with how quickly we're onboarding new interesting data. And so that's been a big focus, and we've seen a lot of improvement there. The next focus that started probably in like the beginning of Q2 phase and kind of ramped up and is still, a big focus is data retrievability. This is also core to making sure that data stored in Filecoin is useful and accessible to people. So there's been a lot of work happening towards retrieval markets, but even before that, making sure that data stored in things like Boost is accessible to people who are fetching that data from IPFS nodes, and that just generally we're testing the bejesus out of all of the retrieval software so that it can work reliably and robustly. And I think the latest number was like 70% retrieval success rate using things like auto retrieve. And so that's like way better than we were a year ago for sure. We still have room to go, but there's been a lot of focus there. Last but not least, there was a kind of new early focus in the beginning of last year around programmability and computation. So for context, I think there were two and a half people working on FVM this time last year, and there were absolutely 0 people working on or even really thinking about, hey, how do we do compute over data in IPFS and Filecoin? That team didn't get actually staffed until February of this year. And so this has been a new and exciting area, a lot of research work, but also kind of incremental milestones towards bringing these capabilities into the Filecoin network over 2022. So this is our roadmap that we kind of put together in June and have been working towards kind of since then. Green check marks against some recent accomplishments since the last time I presented this roadmap. So we now have a live FVM testnet up called Wallaby, which has had over 100. Because I'm going to tell you that in later slides, but it's had over 100 smart contracts deployed, which is pretty cool. I believe Bacalhau, which is one of the early compute over data solutions, is literally launching their beta today. So that's exciting. If you go next door, adjacent, like way next door, in the timeout market, they are actively announcing that right now. Saturn L1 launched publicly on Thursday, so that's like 5 days ago, which is also super exciting. So now I think they went from 50 to 100 L1 Saturn nodes within like 3 days. So that's pretty cool. I'm actually running Station, which is a little desktop worker node where you can run your own little Saturn L2 that is supporting the Saturn network for free. There isn't actually, they don't pay me yet to my little Filecoin wallet in there, but I've already done 150,000 retrieval deals, which is kind of cool. And then finally, Project Singularity, I believe, did a public announcement yesterday or the day before at Phil Lisbon. And so we're making a lot of progress across all of these different tracks, programmability, data retrievability, and capacity and data onboarding. But y'all are here because you're excited about what's coming next and what the kind of main focus is for next year. So this is our focus. We're kind of laser focused in on the Filecoin master plan, especially the second 2 stages. A lot of focus on data, both onboarding data and making it useful, making there be a flywheel of data coming into the Filecoin network that then powers awesome applications and ways that people want to interface and interact with that data. And so if you stick data somewhere and then never get it out either as an institution or publicly for the world, it's not that useful. So that's a core focus for us, is making sure that all of our tooling makes that really, really easy for people who are clients of the Filecoin network to use it all the ways that they would use, the suite of AWS tools that allow data storage. And then big focus for next year as well is compute, bringing computation, smart contracts. This is the launch of FVM on mainnet. This is all of the exciting compute over data stuff, actually connecting in with IPFS and Filecoin, and scaling so that we can run internet scale applications over the data stored in Filecoin. 280 going on 90 petabytes. We're starting to get towards significant amounts of data to run things like machine learning algorithms over, and definitely want to make that as accessible and meet demand for this really, really growing industry. So this is taking a quick look forward into 2023, breaking up these kind of 2 areas into our data group, which is a lot of continued work on capacity and data onboarding and on data retrievability. So that's our data focus. A lot of this is figuring out ways that we can scale these pipelines, making sure that we scale the CDN side, the retrieval market side of Filecoin, and bring that from early alpha to production ready, acting over all of the data in Filecoin, and also starting to push into things like data access controls. And then after that is our compute thread, again, starting first with things like FVM, but then also going into chain scalability so that we have the chain space in Filecoin to support a bajillion smart contracts that are acting over state and scaling that way. And so those are kind of our 2 threads there: programmability, computation, and scalability. So here's a slightly easier view of that that's maybe a little bit more beautiful. And this is what I'm going to use to walk through a couple of these upgrades if you're not as familiar with them, or you just want to know the latest progress. Because we have been here for lab fortnight, lab week, but longer, and have been updating some of our status and timelines of what we're working on. So starting from, I guess that's left to right, your left, with Filecoin Saturn. So Filecoin Saturn is a retrieval market for Filecoin, decentralized CDN, and it has multiple different layers to it that are optimizing for different points of presence and different ways of kind of having really, really fast access to data stored in Filecoin. Saturn just launched their public L1, has over 100 nodes and 100 million retrievals per day. They're currently mirroring, I believe, all IPFS gateway traffic to this network so that they are giving it really, really happy demand so that they can demonstrate that they are actually hitting, I think it was 10x better retrieval performance than the IPFS gateway on average. And I think their 95th percentile is also still like at least twice as fast, if not like 5x as fast. So they are doing a good job against the same corpus of data in demonstrating that Saturn can be a viable replacement for how we currently architect our IPFS gateways. And so the plan there is great. They demonstrate that. We do a small scale integration for a slice of IPFS gateway traffic to go to the Saturn retrieval marketplace, and then we can stop running some of our centralized hardware for the IPFS.io gateway and instead just route all of that traffic into Filecoin Saturn. And then similarly for other folks that are running gateways or that want to accelerate a particular corpus of data, they can pay Saturn, and then Saturn pays their retrieval providers across the network. So both L1 nodes, those are your big, beefy, I have at least 100 gigabytes per second bandwidth, and I will serve you data really, really fast. But I have maybe a limited cache size, and those will fail over to L2 nodes, which, well, I guess not this computer. My computer that's up there runs one of those little L2 nodes on my Mac laptop that then does, okay, I have a little space of that cache miss space that I then send to the L1 nodes whenever they don't have the content they were requested. L1s are up, L2s coming next. They will be joining Testnet soon, and Station actually already, I think I have Station next. Station is actually already supporting anyone to become a Saturn L2 node, just it's not charged yet. So you can start doing this pro bono. I highly recommend it. It's really fun. It's very gratifying to see your counter tick up. But Station is actually really, really exciting because it's not just focused on Saturn. So not only can you run an L2 retrieval node, but this is geared toward being a Filecoin worker for many of the different job types that might exist more widely in the Filecoin ecosystem. And so focused first on Saturn, but also focused on things like compute over data, where you as a node might want to offer your compute resources into the wider network, or running things like distributed testing. And so this desktop node really helps any node participate in the wider Filecoin ecosystem. It is up. It's already beautiful. If you go to philstation.app, I think that's right, if I remember correctly. Otherwise, check the Slack channel, and you can go and ask there. But they've shipped their website and their first release, and you can go and start running it today. I really recommend it. You do have to put in your little Filecoin address because they are planning to push payments through the File Station platform in the future. They do not yet today. But I'm super excited for this. I think they're kind of like first, as soon as the Saturn L2 testnet comes online, that'll start shipping payments, which will be cool. Next, sealing as a service. I bet you will hear more about this later today from people who know more about the current status than I do. But this is super exciting. This helps decouple the various different roles that you can play within the Filecoin network. And so previously, it's been pretty challenging, as many people in this room can attest, to come online as a Filecoin storage provider. It involves amassing a large amount of hardware, large amount of collateral, and committing to a long-term participation in the Filecoin economy as you seal a deal and then commit to it over time and demonstrate proofs that you're continuing to store it. And what sealing as a service allows is a bit of decoupling. So say you are someone who's been participating in the Ethereum proof of work ecosystem for the past however many years. You have all these GPUs. You'd love to figure out something useful to do with them now that Ethereum is proof of stake. And vice versa, you have someone in the Filecoin ecosystem who is doing an amazing job of storing lots of useful data for the network and actually has more storage capacity, but is limited on their GPU capacity when it comes to sealing new capacity or new sectors into the Filecoin network. And this enables a bit of a decoupling between those two different roles so that you can have participants that optimize for different parts of the Filecoin storage providing service. Your ex-Ethereum miner can become a sealing service that seals sectors on behalf of other nodes in the network, and then your storage providers can really optimize for, hey, I just want to maintain storage really, really well instead of running GPU farms that give me the really beefy sealing pipeline. And so that's the vision. That's what's happening here. I believe there's already a version of this that is live in Lotus, and a whole chunk of humans who are working on building the sealing software to integrate with that, gearing up for a pilot. I think this is actually maybe a little bit more in the future, but you can sign up to be a storage provider in this sealing as a service kind of like early pilot later this quarter. And there's a QR code if you want to join the waitlist. And this, we need people on both sides, both who have kind of like more sealing capacity and more sealing demand, so that we can match these groups up and demonstrate that this has helps many more groups optimize their performance in the network. If you care about this, talk to Magic, talk to Daniel Leon, and they can tell you more about how it's proceeding. This is not last, but very excitingly, Filecoin Virtual Machine. Y'all have probably heard about this, but this is what allows us to deliver on-chain programmability into the Filecoin network. Super exciting, because really what it's doing is kind of upgrading all of the capabilities of Filecoin with the ability for anyone to upgrade them. And that's allows us to do all sorts of crazy things, a whole multiverse of Filecoin capabilities, but 3 in particular that I love. You can start doing things like perpetual storage deals that kind of auto-renew or auto-repair themselves over time. And if you commit them with even a collective wallet of resources or endowment for that storage, that can persist long into the future without the initial individual who made the deal having to worry about renewals. There's work around data DAOs where you can have a group collectively curating, governing, maybe selling access to, and benefiting from data stored in Filecoin. So I think that's going to be really exciting, maybe first for things like governing a collection of all NFTs that have ever been created, but expanding from there, maybe you have machine learning data sets that are being created and curated by kind of like larger collections of people, and then using some of the things that are coming around Medusa or other networks, using those as actual revenue generating systems. So I think that's really exciting. And last but not least, there's also a lot of tooling that can be built on top of FVM that just helps the economy transact faster. And so things like helping storage providers grow more smoothly, harnessing Filecoin token holders, and similarly giving Filecoin token holders useful things that they can do with their Filecoin collateral by actually putting it to work with storage providers. And the really cool thing versus maybe DeFi lending in other ecosystems is that these can actually be under-collateralized loans based on storage provider history and performance. And so you can look at storage providers that are doing a really, really good job in the network and lower down their collateral requirements, and vice versa. If you don't have much history in the Filecoin ecosystem, maybe your kind of like interest rates will be higher. And so that's a really exciting new thing that we can see many people start to explore with. Our roadmap for FVM is going really well. We've already shipped milestone 0, 0.5, and milestone 1, which actually inserted FVM into mainnet. So if you are doing anything with Filecoin mainnet today, you are actually running on FVM. It's just not programmable yet, because that's the next piece that everyone's working on. And there's kind of 2 main components of this that are headed towards that kind of like ultimate FVM milestone of making all of our smart contracts programmable and deployable there. One, we're making some changes to the actors within Filecoin so that they have a better interface, a better API for being programmable, and 2, actually deploying our very first foreign runtime, which is the EVM runtime, into FVM, so that you can see kind of our architecture diagram here, where FVM is this hypervisor layer, and you plug in additional runtimes on top. We already have the built-in actors, but our next one after that is EVM, and that is what Wallaby, I guess, there you go. That's what Wallaby is running right now, our FEVM testnet. And so this already allows MetaMask deployment, hard hat. You can use all of your favorite Solidity tools. You can take an Ethereum contract with 0 changes and deploy it on Wallaby testnet. But the more exciting part for us is that you can also maybe start from that sort of beginning, but then augment it with direct calls into Filecoin native actors. And that's what we're focused on unlocking now ahead of mainnet launch. And there's a ton of tools. If you are excited about playing around with this, highly recommend watching some of these videos from the FVM Foundry. I mentioned that we are working on upgrading some of the core pieces of the Filecoin built-in actors ahead of this. So there's a whole suite of FIPS that are launching in our next Filecoin Network upgrade, which is targeted for late November, that are allowing better ways of programming into the Filecoin actors from smart contracts. And so there's a number of refactors that we wanted to do ahead of FVM that then creates a better programming interface. And finally, FVM, the Wallaby testnet, will be going from a constantly evolving and upgrading testnet, which is pretty much getting reset once, sometimes even twice a week, as new capabilities like MetaMask support get launched. This will be upgrading into Buildernet at the end of November, so it'll become a long-running testnet as we go into Filecoin mainnet launch. And people can then deploy and grow their smart contracts there so that they are ready to go on day 1 as we actually ship FVM, which I believe is targeted for the 8th of February is the currently scoped timeline. So going well. But in the meantime, I really, really recommend joining the Foundry. This now has I mean, this number is actually out of date because there was a hackathon over the weekend, and I think we had like another 10 teams join the Foundry just during that period of time. But this is our early builders program. It does already have over 100 teams that are deploying smart contracts onto FVM, and it's a great community. There's lots of resources and time with the dev team and access to things like hackathons and grants. So I highly recommend getting involved if you're building anything on FVM. I probably need to speed up because I think I'm over time, but there's a lot of really cool things that can be built on top of FVM, things like Medusa, Retrieve.org, Web3 Storage Bounty, and much more. These are kind of like new L2 capabilities or L2 networks that can be launched on top of FVM, which bring new exciting things. Medusa, for example, is a scalable threshold encryption network, which can be used to have encrypted data be unlocked for a given user as long as they've met a certain criteria without the set of notaries that are governing that network ever being able to see the data itself. And so those are the sorts of really exciting new things that anyone can launch on top of FVM very, very soon. You also have things like Retrieve.org, which I believe is already deployed on Ethereum testnet, which allows you to do like bounty or you have storage providers stake some collateral, and then you can demonstrate over time that retrievals are actually being served correctly. Last, but not actually last. Second to last, but definitely not least, is Bacalhau and all of the compute over data work. We definitely want people to be able to store data in Filecoin, but even more exciting, compute and interact over that data in highly flexible ways. There are hundreds of data sets, folding at home, Flickr Commons, all sorts of interesting data being stored in Filecoin already, and we expect that to increase significantly into the future. Like, at this point, onboarding like 3.5 petabytes of data into Filecoin per day, and a lot of that is open access data. Really excited to bring things like, compute, AWS Lambda, those sorts of interfaces onto that data as well. And really, we think that there's going to be many computation networks that launch on top of Filecoin as kind of layer 2s that then optimize for different points in Juan's triangle, where maybe you're optimizing for privacy of data with something like fully homomorphic encryption, or verifiability, where you're focused on like ZK proofs, or maybe you're optimizing for a very specific use case that you're focused on machine learning algorithms, or you're focused on kind of like more ETL data processing. And we think this is going to lead to many groups creating independent L1s that L2s that share some baseline components. And that's one of the things that Bacalhau has been working on, is many of those building blocks that can then power additional computing networks. And the whole kind of compute over data working group has come together to be sharing a lot of best practices, standardizing what makes sense to standardize, but also allowing these different groups to all innovate together in this space, because we think that many, many solutions here are going to proliferate. Cool. There we go. I knew I missed something. There we go. This is last but not least is InterPlanetary Consensus. So we mentioned there's going to be a whole ton of new chain state coming from all of the improvements around FVM and all of the layer 2s built on top. And we're going to need to support that in Filecoin by increasing our chain capacity. And this is where what we have been calling hierarchical consensus, but that's hard to say. So we're now calling interplanetary consensus, which is much nicer, which is allowing us to shard the Filecoin chain into multiple child chains so that we can actually support internet scale applications. Child chains do not have to have the same security guarantees, the same block time, even the same token or the same consensus algorithm as their parents. However, you can still transfer state smoothly between these different shards. And so that's the really, really exciting vision that the Consensus Lab team has been working towards for the last year. And they are actually approaching testnet, I believe, end of this quarter. So very, very exciting days in interplanetary consensus land. And so they are aiming to launch their SpaceNet, which sounds the best name for a testnet ever, in my opinion, with their Mir consensus framework this quarter. They will have interplanetary consensus fully integrated into SpaceNet in early Q1, and then aiming to actually integrate fully into Filecoin mainnet and be able to have anyone launch Mir-based proof proof of stake subnets in kind of like early Q3 of next year. And so that's super, super exciting. And hopefully we don't end up with too much congestion in the Filecoin network before we bring this exciting new capability to everyone. But we think this is going to be a pretty big deal. And we're hopeful that it's not just a big deal for Filecoin, but that we can also share some of this research and knowledge with other networks as well, so that the whole Web3 space can kind of upgrade our capacity and bring all of Web 2 into our fold. So fingers crossed. So yeah, that's our quick tour through some of the many things happening in Filecoin in 2023. Warning, we will add more because that's just how we work. So I will be continuing to update this, but the goal is that this, in the future, hopefully this is my last presentation where I do all of this futzing around in Google Slides. And going forward, we have a handy dandy little tool that I can enable all of you to update your timelines for milestones, and they can just automatically populate into my handy dandy little diagram, and then I can take a screenshot of it whenever I'm going to go present about it. So I'm very excited for that, and I request keep an eye out, I think in the next couple of weeks, for a request from me to support me with being able to share the good word about all of the amazing work y'all are doing to make Filecoin better and more powerful. And just really, here's to an amazing 2023. It's going to be a fantastic year.